Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Matt Connerton, and of course, with me is the Honorable Gary S. Hopper. Hello, Gary.
Matt, top of the evening to you.
Oh, you got it right this time. I think last week you said top of the afternoon.
Yeah, whatever.
It was like a whole kerfuffle about what time of day it
I know.
was because, you know.
You carry a grudge.
I mean, it's
pissed.
dark out.
I'm so freaking pissed.
Oh, jeez.
Calm down over there, will you? Just chill out.
I'm just wrecking the
Freaking
place.
switch to decaf or
Hulk
something.
smash! Sorry. Yes, why are you upset?
Well, because my mom over in Goffstown, if you're familiar with Bernardville, there's a pet store that deals with reptiles and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in there yesterday when Mom was picking up her crickets for her toads. Yeah, I know. Anyway.
Can't you just go outside and...
You would think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she's picking up, and I thought it was really, really creative. And I went in and I said, is this where people go if they have an erectile dysfunction?
Ah,
Yes.
How'd that go over?
They thought it was wicked funny, except
Good.
they'd heard it before.
Oh, really?
Which meant that there's somebody else a little bit baked like me out there, which is sad. I feel bad for them and upset that I wasn't original. I try to be original, but I just can't make it happen.
It's not something you can try. You just have to. You just have to be.
No.
You just be.
No. You got to work at it. It's like anything.
That's hard though. Working's hard.
I hate it. I hate it. Yeah.
So much easier to be.
Anyway. Dennis Hogan is our county attorney. This is how many terms?
I've done one term so far.
One term.
This is my first time for re-election.
Your opponent's better looking than you.
Depends who you ask, I'm sure.
It's odd that you would would weigh in on that.
You know, she's pretty.
Oh, it's a female.
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know why I assumed it was a man. How sexist of me. I can't believe I just, wow.
Wow, you blew it.
I did, yes.
You just ruined, your colors, you just
I
let
know,
everything go.
I'm a chauvinist pig.
Yeah,
everyone knows.
exactly. So your second term now, you had actually almost a Hail Mary election last time, right? Because it was kind of difficult because you came in at the last minute or something. I forget what the details.
No. You must be thinking about Judge Coughlin.
No, Coughlin.
I was unopposed as the Republican in the first time.
Right.
There was a three-man race. The Democrat. There was an independent and myself, and I got 53% of the vote.
Okay.
So I didn't think of it as a Hail Mary, but.
Well, no, I thought that you. Okay, I'm obviously incorrect, but it's.
You might be thinking of when Judge Coughlin was elected. There was actually nobody on the Republican side. He wrote his name in, and then he won a very close election. It was like 55,000 or 55,000, which he bested the incumbent Democrat by 100 votes, and then and then he served for a little while before he went to Iraq, and then when he came back, he became a judge.
And then who we appointed for people who don't know, if you're elected county attorney can't fulfill their obligation. In this case, Judge Coughlin went over to Iraq.
Right.
The county delegation elects the next county attorney.
Right.
And we elected
Marguerite Wageling.
Marjorie Wageling.
Right.
I can't even say it.
Right.
A really nice lady.
Yes.
She is now at the AG's office.
No. That's where she came from. Where she went was to a judgeship as well. She's a Superior Court judge.
Okay.
Judge Coughlin's a district court judge or circuit court now, and Judge Wageling
we just changed
is
that, didn't we?
She just changed it from district to circuit court. So everybody's trying to get used to that.
We try to mix it up.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely mixed it up.
Yeah, the legislature's main objective is just to confuse things once in a while.
That's in the
That'll
New
happen.
Hampshire Constitution, right?
It is,
That's
yeah. The legislature gets to mess with the judiciary as much as we want.
Yeah.
So then when Marguerite Wageling went to become a judge, the Democratic delegation appointed Bob Walsh, and then I ran against Bob Walsh. That's how it went.
Okay. So he was an incumbent when you ran against him the first time.
Yes.
How long? Was he in for like 6 months?
9 maybe. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
Maybe a whole year.
So anyway, one part of the show is trying to explain to people what a county attorney is and does, because it's like we had executive councilmen, or hopefully an executive councilman running for election, explaining what they do.
Right.
We've had Jim Hardy come in explaining a little bit what the sheriff's obligations are.
Right. Well, and we have 10 counties. Probably they're not the same job in each one because there's various sizes of the counties. So like Hillsborough and Rockingham are similarly sized counties.
Yeah.
So the county attorney is an office of 20 assistant county attorneys who prosecute the felonies in the Superior Courts. And also they prosecute the misdemeanor appeals in the Superior Court. So in Rockingham and in Hillsborough, because we have so many, we're a leadership position. We're running the office, we're managing the office.
Okay.
So that's what we are as county attorneys.
Now, what when you say felony, you want to explain to people what a felony? Because people
Sure.
think,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you
I
have
know
violations are on the bottom of your scale of things you can do wrong that you'll talk to the police about.
right.
And misdemeanors are next. Simple assault. If I just touch you and I have no reason to touch you, and then felonies.
Matt does that to me all the time. I haven't charged him yet, but
Felonies are the ones that are much more serious. I mean, when you're theft, it's over a certain dollar amount. When it's assault, it's a certain amount of injury or to a certain kind of person or of a sexual nature, and so it works all the way up to manslaughters, negligent homicides. Those are the most serious ones that we deal with. And then murders are actually handled by the AG's office because thankfully there's so few and we need to centralize it with the AG's office.
okay. Now, from what I understand, the definition of a felony is anything that could be basically that you're charged with that you could be required to serve a year or more in jail.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good definition.
Okay. So, because I was curious to your take on this. I think we had legislation that, and I could have this wrong. We have the legislature has about 1,000 bills, over 1,000 bills that come in, and keeping track of them all is way beyond my scope of ability.
Sure.
I believe we had legislation in that made it legal for a felon to still own a firearm as long as it was a non-violent felony.
Okay.
What's your take on that? Is that
I think part of the punishment of having committed the felony is not to have a firearm. So I don't like reducing the penalties.
okay?
I think it's less tough on crime to reduce the penalties and say, oh, don't worry about it. Even though you just burnt the guy's house down, you can still have a firearm.
That wouldn't be. I guess that wouldn't be a violent crime.
Well, it
would
depends how you define violent. I mean, usually if it's against property, we don't think of that as violent.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But
You
if
can
they're
define
still
it
in
any way
that
you
could
want
be-
to, of course.
If they're still in it, sleeping.
Yeah.
I think a
Rather
lot of
violent,
property
yes,
crimes.
yes.
All the burglaries, just running a burglary ring,
Right.
selling large amounts of
Drugs.
and then you're going to say, well, that's all right. You guys can still keep firearms. I guess I would think that's lessening the penalty on people. So.
And you also, if people are into, like the example you use, if they're serial burglars,
Yeah.
or if they're burglaring, are they burglaring? Are they
I was gonna
actually
s-
stealing
You generally
cereal?
don't want them to have firearms so that the next time they're burglaring, they're not carrying a firearm. You want to.
Right, right.
I was going to say, I actually stole a box of Frosted Flakes once, but that was like 10 years ago, so I assume it's the statute of
Statute of
That's
limitations.
limitations.
nothing. I went out back my house and shot one, so I was like a serial killer.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
How long ago was that?
I'm not telling.
Okay, I don't blame you. Good move.
Yeah,
Good
I don't
move,
know
yeah.
I don't know what the statute of
Right.
limitations is.
Wow.
For serial killing, I don't know. It's got to be long.
It's got to be wicked long, right? I guess probably depends on whether
At
it's
least as
Lucky
long as
Charms
it
or not.
stays. Well, right, exactly. As long as it stays crunchy.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yes.
So now, how do you like you went it? You got elected.
Right. If you're asking me how I like the job, I enjoy it. I mean, before I even got to do the job, run for the job, I talked to County Attorney Jim Reams over in Rockingham to understand what the job was, to see if
Right.
it was something that would fit my talents. And he explained it to me as a job where you're dealing with everything that the department deals with, everything a department head and a leader has to deal with, and all those things that have to do with management, making
Right.
sure you get the right people to do the job, and then working with the budget, with the powers that be, and then interacting with other agencies, particularly the chiefs of police. I thought, well, that's the kind of thing that would suit my background well and my personality well, and
Right.
and that's exactly what I found. And when you're doing something that you're good at and it suits your personality, you like it. And so
Yeah.
I do like it.
Because you have to work with attorneys that are not necessarily on the top of their wage scale for being an attorney. So you have to balance that out. Try
Well,
to
that's
keep
true.
them happy.
But I'll tell you, they're certainly on the top of the intellectual scale, if you ask me. I mean, the people that I've been able to keep on and to hire are really just some of the brightest people that I've ever met.
Why would that be the? You would think that the.
They like the job.
Okay.
They like the job. It's a rewarding job. It's tough, and when you do something that's tough and you do it well, that's rewarding in itself. But it's also rewarding at what you achieve by helping victims to get justice. I mean, that's a big deal, and they really enjoy that.
Yeah, I know. Let's see, who did I talk to? I talked to Wageling when she was running about a specific instance. They were. It was one bill that I introduced back, I think, in 2002, and it was result of, like a lot of legislators, a result of a personal experience, and what defense attorneys were doing to young kids that had been sexually abused. They would basically right now, if you have like family members, and let's presume everybody's an adult. And the defense attorney has a tool where they can sequester, I think it's sequester, or whatever, keep the other family members out of the court while somebody's testifying, so that if somebody else comes up, their testimony, if there's going to be a conflict, it could be rectified by listening to the other person.
Right.
What do you call that? Is that
You said it, sequester.
Sequester.
Okay. And I guess a classic technique that the defense attorneys were doing was sequestering the parents,
Yeah.
which would force basically a 14-year-old kid in a little room, or a 13-year-old kid in a room with a guy in a black robe that he or she doesn't know, and a mother, the perpetrator, who's they're already obviously going to be afraid of,
Right.
and a jury maybe, but you're putting this little kid in this situation without mom or dad in the room. I don't know if that still takes place. I introduced legislation to eliminate that as a possibility.
Yeah.
The premise being that you could still get the same judgment by just calling the parents first alone, which is okay. Their parents they're big kids; they can deal with it. You know if that still happens?
Well, I haven't heard the complaint about that happening, so I've got to. That's all I can tell you about it. I have not heard my prosecutors talking about that as being a problem.
Okay, because I know I introduced legislation, and it was I wasn't getting along with people up there at the time because I tend to do that. But at the end of this legislative session, they have this fiasco where they attach bills to this and bills to this, and it turns into a crazy. It becomes crazy. And I had a floor amendment that attached it to something one of the senators really, really wanted it because the Senate had already killed it. And I got actually a unanimous vote on the House floor to my amendment. That went over, and then it got dumped in the committee of conference behind closed doors. Somebody said, "Oh, he doesn't really need this. It's okay. We got to figure it out." And then the people that were in the committee of conference let them drop the ball. But I don't know if that's necessary.
It might just be a matter of strategy, as you say, making sure that the person speaks first, and then there isn't any reason to not have them.
Well, it's strategy.
And of course, that's part of
the strategy was to actually unnerve the child.
Sure. Oh, yeah. And our response to that sort of thing is we have a victim witness who tries to explain the whole process and be there for that person, so that at least that person who's been dealing with the child since probably the child first went to the Child Advocacy Center to give their report. And then explaining the whole process. So it becomes a relationship, and then the victim witness advocate is there at that time. So if somebody does have to be sequestered and it's somebody close to them, then at least they have the victim witness advocate.
Right.
So
Yeah, the lady.
do you know what the Child Advocacy Center is? It's a. In the past, we lost a lot of witnesses, the young ones, because they would have to go through so many steps in order to get to trial.
Yeah.
And so in Marguerite's time, they brought in the CAC is what it's called, and we have one person who's trained to ask questions in a way that gets just the facts, doesn't suggest anything like the problems they had back in the 80s. Yeah, no leading questions. And in another room are all the part of the team that would have to speak to that child at another time, and they are able to shoot questions into the ear of that person, and at the same time watch on television what's going on. So it's as if we're all there, but the child only experiences one of us being there.
Right, so it's not overwhelming.
Yes, exactly. And so then we get all the testimony
You put
that we
like
need.
big bright lights.
No bright lights. You know, we actually have little chairs for little people kind of thing.
Yeah.
If they want to,
That's gotta be
whatever can relax them and just get them to tell the story. We don't want to lead them by giving them certain things, but just to get them to relax and tell the story. And of course, one of the people who's in that room is the victim witness advocate, and that person is going to follow that case right from that point. So the child gets that from the beginning, and that's our way of combating what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know that the child advocate in the case I'm talking about, I forget what her name was. I should remember, but she's a wonderful lady that works over here at, or at least at that time. That was 10-something years ago.
Well, it's probably the same person.
She's wonderful. Absolutely
Catherine,
wonderful with the kids. Huh?
Kim and, well, that would have been.
I'll forget.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
horrible with names. But, she's absolutely delightful. So dealing with a case, you have to deal with cases like that. That's got to be wicked tough.
Well, that's what the office deals with, yeah. And there, it's, you steel yourself to do the job. You just say, well, this is where it is, and it's disgusting that these kind of people are doing these kind of things in the world, but now it's time for us to do something about it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you deal with it.
It is tough. I mean, I actually had an email from another county attorney just giving us the audio of a judge sentencing somebody to a child pornography case, and the judge thanks the prosecutors for sparing the court having to see the actual pictures. But then the judge reads the internet description of the picture, which is descriptive. And I'm thinking, well, he didn't do me any favors because he just put a picture in my head.
Right.
And I didn't want to have that picture in my head.
No.
So, yeah, in that sense, when you have to, and I have not, in my 2 years, had to look at any of that kind of stuff.
Good.
I mean, there are other people handling the cases, and they spare me. They don't say, hey, look, this is what the guy did. They just tell me it's one of those cases, and that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
That's all I want to know.
Yeah, I know my daughter was a secretary or legal secretary for one of the guys in the defense attorney for one of the guys in Mount Vernon.
Yeah.
And she had to go through all those pictures.
Yeah, that'd be tough. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you deal with it. I think, it was actually funny. Years ago in the legislature, I was talking to one of these old cops from up north. It was awesome, He says, what the heck is going on? There's like people messing around with little kids all over the place. I said, what happened years ago? He says, you got men beating up women and messing around with little kids. What's going on in society? The cotton-picking wheels are coming off. I says, what's the difference? He says, because years ago, if somebody messed around with a little kid, we took him out back to police station, we beat the ever-loving hell out of him, and told him next time he'd be buried back there. And they didn't do it again. Or they moved out of town.
Well, that's the thing. They moved out of town, and then and then they were doing it somewhere else.
Right.
I think it's been happening, and one of the things is we found a case came before us, and I hate to even describe what had happened, but I guess I won't. But the point is, it was a misdemeanor in the 70s.
Wow.
And it's a felony, and something is a felony now. Something that you would just think. Let me put it this way: you would think it's really, really weird.
Yeah.
Okay. Although, that's as far as I go.
Animals?
No, just between a boy and a man.
that-
Between
is
a boy
that-
and a man, and it was
oh.
really weird, and it was only a misdemeanor.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
And now it's a felony. So
Right.
we've changed the laws. I mean, that's
Right.
one of the things I always try to tell you guys over in the legislature who handle the money. You've made the laws tougher. You've made a lot more things felonies. Then you have to pay for us to do the work to prosecute those felonies. I mean, for example, the strangulation law that only came in within a couple of years. We're going to have 100 more cases just in the north.
Strangulation.
Well, yeah. It used to be if you grabbed somebody like this, you made their voice change. That was an assault.
Yeah.
Right, you would think, yeah.
Well, it's been upgraded to a felony assault.
Why?
Because according to studies, it was found that doing something like that in a domestic situation is a precursor to somebody getting killed. So they said, let's try to, how many people were getting killed in domestic situations, in the past?
No, not really.
Well, he saw it a lot in the news. He said, oh my
Yeah.
God, another, couple that was together and then they went bad and now she's dead. So they passed it for that reason, to try to stop that from happening.
No kidding.
So now it's a felony. So now you do it and we're big time on your case instead of just, a misdemeanor slap on the wrist.
Right.
Okay.
So.
So there was,
But it adds more, in doing that, it adds more work to the county attorney's office.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
All of
because,
them across the state.
because if it's a misdemeanor, somebody will plead to it just to get out of court.
Sure, you're just going to get a fine on a misdemeanor.
Right, you're going to get a fine, so
Very rarely are you going to get a couple months in the jail.
why would you pay a lawyer if you're only going to get a fine anyway? Right?
Well,
But if it's a
everybody makes their
felony,
own choices, but
Yeah, but a felony, now you're talking about serious stuff, so you
Yeah.
kind of have to, so you have to step up to the plate because they have to
right.
defend themselves too.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But those are just two of the things that over the last 30 years we've gone from they're just misdemeanors to now they're felonies.
Now, over the last 30
Because one of the things I was thinking about when I went into the office is why is this costing so much? You look at the old budgets that they didn't. And look at the amount of people that were there, and you're like, has Ashford, Manchester, Hillsborough grown that much? And that's part of it.
Right.
It has
right.
grown. In the 80s and the 90s, there wasn't quite a boom in the Hillsborough County. But there's also the addition of things becoming felonies that weren't felonies.
Well, I think also is if you look back in the 60s, your crime rate really wasn't that high.
Yeah, before the baby boom, I think you're right.
And then the 70s came. It still wasn't horrible, but then by the time the 80s came, it got ridiculous.
Yeah, the 70s increased it from what you can. My view on it was always that you had a lot of young men come into being because of the baby boom, so they had tended to commit crimes, and then 80s seemed to be fostered by drug use, which became really bad drugs like crack as we went into the 90s, and it's kept up, and now we've got prescription drugs we're trying to get a handle on, and.
Yeah, I know the Republican answer to that in the 80s was build more prisons.
Right.
And I'll tell you what I've been working on since I've been up there, because I don't think that's the answer. I think housing thousands and thousands of people in prison is necessarily a wonderful testament to society.
Well, it's a
Not that there's an alternative.
yeah. You got to find an alternative to it, because if you just say don't worry about it.
No, I'm not
try
saying
not
that.
to do it
no,
again.
no, I'm Republican. I can't say that.
I don't think anybody really says that. But
But the what happened in the 60s, you had the vast majority of children were brought up in intact homes. You introduced no-fault divorce in the early 70s, compounded by the war on poverty.
Yeah.
By the time the 80s came around, you had a 50% divorce rate compounded by the number of children in single-parent homes. And there's a really cool study in Africa where they were trying to introduce elephants into a certain area, into a reserve where they had been killed off years ago. And the easiest way to do that is to introduce young elephants, because it's just easier to transport them. And when those young bull elephants got to be around teenage years, they started killing off the white rhinos for fun.
Oh, geez.
Just for good time. So they had next thing you know, they're having to destroy some of these bull elephants to keep the rhinos alive. And the way they solved the problem is they introduced actual full-grown bull elephants into the area, and it calmed them down.
That's an old lesson. I was just wandering around the streets of Baltimore, I believe, one day, because I was getting a bus
That's
from
not
one
very
place
safe.
to another. Well, it was a bus from one place to another.
Yeah.
I felt safe, but
Really?
and I think it was a place called Washington Square. There was a statue that really struck me, and it was just a man and a boy, and it was all father son kind of thing. They were naked, but it's because it was a statue. And
Why is that okay if it's a statue?
well, I
That
don't know,
doesn't
it just
seem
seemed
right.
all right if it was a statue.
It would make me blush, I'll tell you.
But the point was, the man was restraining the kid almost naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As he was sort of set there, his arm just sort of naturally went as a restraint to the boy,
Right.
Yes.
as a natural thing. So he wasn't holding him tight,
Yeah.
and he wasn't, certainly wasn't holding him by the back of the neck. It was just, here we are together, and this boy is being restrained because I'm a man, and that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And that was an old statue.
Yeah.
And the lesson, the lesson of the wisdom of the ages.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Now that you mention that, I think about my my 7-year-old. He just turned 7 the other day.
Wow.
7-year-old grandson. It's the same thing. When he's next to me, my arms basically holding both of his shoulders next to me, and it's not. It's an affectionate thing.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's also letting him, in a gentle way, know who's in charge.
Right.
And it's subconscious, right? Like
I don't.
you're
I
not
don't think about it.
consciously-
No, but now
Yeah.
that he mentions it, I think I'm
Yeah.
remembering doing that all the time to him.
Yeah.
Because their little boys are full of what makes the grass green, so to speak, and they want to do things, but you gotta they gotta learn control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they can't learn that unless there's a guy around that can actually physically control them, especially when they get to be teenagers. I had
They're going to challenge whatever is there, and
Yeah.
if it's easy to control them, then it's great.
Yeah, I know that there's a guy I used to work with at Kirk Motion Products in Hollis. He constantly, he luckily, his nephews live next to him, a single mom, but he would have to go up there a few times a week because she was physically unable to control them. And he's a huge dude.
Yeah.
And he had no problem controlling them. But teenage boys, they start feeling their oats, and mom's not necessarily in a position to do much about it.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but just like dogs, they would prefer to be instructed, so to speak.
Right? Yeah, they need.
The dogs that bite you tend to be the ones that aren't don't have a good control mechanism, I guess.
Right. Yeah, the dogs that are out of control are the ones that are the most dangerous.
Yeah.
The ones that don't. Yeah. But anyway, so so besides prosecuting that, what would you, if you're reelected, are you going to make any changes? What would you like to see done, or is it more?
Well, I think the changes that I've brought so far, we just need to continue them. And one thing that I'm proud of is that when I got elected, I didn't have a bunch of attorneys that were helping me that wanted then to have jobs and they weren't qualified. So I've been able to just pick people who are qualified to do the work.
Yeah.
And let go of those people who are just not qualified to do the work. So I'll continue that. One of the things I want to work on is what they call a drug court. It started, the impetus is coming from the court, but I need to participate in that.
Right.
And we're hoping to do the same thing that other jurisdictions have done, which is to get the worst of the worst drug problem people. Once they have done something which they're inevitably going to do, which gets them in the court, we actually try to get them off the drugs. Send them through a program, which is called the drug court, that monitors them. They're back every week in the court showing that they're, making progress to getting off drugs. Because those are the people who are, stealing the jewelry, going into houses and taking all the copper. I can list many other things that they're doing, but those are the ones.
Cereal boxes.
Yeah. Well, great amounts of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things we see.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and one would hope from the numbers that they have in other counties that are less busy than ours, if we could have the same thing applied here, we'd be talking about hundreds of people, and for hundreds of people who are out there committing these petty and not so petty property crimes. To take them off doing that, I think it would make a nice impact on the livability of Nashua and Manchester and the towns outside that they go to.
How do you deal with, say currently the system is somebody gets caught, obviously they're a drug addict or whatever it is, they get caught doing something petty right now, or they get caught something doing, let's say, a felony.
Well, generally,
what would be the functional difference between the two?
Now we're looking at somebody and we're saying, geez, you just have kept doing this. We just got to give you some time in prison. I mean, you just refuse to stop. It's too bad you're on drugs, but you just refuse to stop committing crimes. Go spend some time in prison. That's somewhat of a problem because then as soon as they get out, they just pick it up right where they left off. Being in prison doesn't remove them from the drug problem.
No, it
doesn't
might
separate
sober them
them
up for a few weeks, but that's about it.
So we have to. So the idea is to do something different. To say, okay, you've done it. You don't seem to be able to do it on your own. We are going to have you coming back every single week, continuing to hang prison time over your head. But if you get off the drugs, you don't have to go to prison. So it becomes. It's actually a lot of work for them to actually get off the drugs. It's easy to probably just lie around in prison. But if we can appeal to their humanity that's still in there, and come back from the dead, so to speak.
It's from the dead, pretty close. Is a good.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, they're like zombies.
I know.
In my mind, you see, you see people and you think you're not even like in the same place we are.
Are they like as bad as the legislators? I bet she doesn't comment on that. Just saying.
Yeah.
Now, have you, do you know of any success? I know years ago they were talking about for kids like that, not necessarily kids either, but basically somebody's that far gone, they really almost need time away almost, not necessarily in prison, because that isn't obviously doing any good, or they wouldn't be back in the streets a week later. I thought years ago they talked about like a boot camp type thing that they did to some people.
Yeah, well, the big lingo right now in the law enforcement community and the corrections community is evidence-based. And what they mean by that is you have to show by study in a scientific way that a program actually has results.
Correct.
And so supposedly these programs for sitting down and actually guiding the person through what they need to do, according to the evidence, those work. The boot camp, they say, all anecdotal, that when you really just study the people, they've been through the boot camp, and just all it made them was stronger physically, and then they would go out and continue to commit the same crimes.
So they can run from the cops better,
right,
that's about it.
You'd be a better fighter and a better runner, and but not because the things that they talk about that really bring a person back is one of them, amazingly, just look, the attitude that work is a good thing. That you're not being hoodwinked by going to a job, that you're actually you're helping yourself, you're doing something that's noble. That attitude has to be put into somebody. That's one of the things that amazes me.
They don't get it.
No, their attitude is, work for suckers. Or, work, I can't be bothered. I'm going to do something else, I'm just going to scan something. So you got to get that attitude. You got to hang around with the right people. You got to stop hanging around with your drug buddies. And if it's, family, if it's your kid, if it's your parent, whoever stays on the straight and narrow, those are the people you have to hang with.
Right.
So all those kind of things, and having the sort of the vocabulary of telling people no in a nice way. Your drug buddy wants you to go down to the bar. How you going to handle that? So actually, what they're working on right now is this model that that has sort of person-to-person coaching, so that the person who's been in trouble and it's some sort of substance that gets them into trouble comes in, has an appointment, and is talked through situations that they're going to face in the coming week. That would be an extremely, some states are doing it, that would be extremely expensive. New Hampshire's obviously very far from doing that, because it would take a redesign of the probation department for them to, instead of just checking on everybody all the time, to actually have people coming into them and then coach them through it. So it would mean spending some probably extra time on certain people. But it's there's also an attitude of, or an idea that different people need different things. Like if it's your first time and you're never going to do it again, best thing is to just let you know that, look, this is serious. We really mean this is serious. You can't do this kind of thing. And a lot of the people will just be like so embarrassed that they were caught and that they have to go to the court and people have to see them. They're never going to do it again. Yeah. And so knowing the difference between that person and the person who's way lost and needs a lot of help, that's a big part of getting to where you want to be in the whole corrections area. But corrections is not. I'm talking to you about a seminar that I went to. Corrections is not our part. Our part is just agreeing to these sentences, because we do the prosecution.
It might have been the same seminar I went to a while ago, it was 6 months ago or something like that.
Yeah, it could be.
But it was very labor intensive. It was, each person had to basically have, like you say, a coach. The prosecutor had to be involved. The person's attorney had to be involved. The judge has to be involved. Right. And it's a huge chunk of man hours per person.
Yeah, that's how the drug court's going to work, and it's going to be started with a federal grant, and then of course, if it continues, I think we're going to have to show.
That's wicked bad.
Yeah, well,
you know how that works.
Well, they've given it. The federal grant comes so that we'll do that program.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And then it's going to go away, and we're going to have to show ourselves between you, me, and the other folks that are involved, that it's actually working to save money. Because obviously, if it doesn't, you're going to say, well, why bother? You know?
Right. Yeah, if the federal grant...
Or it's going to show that maybe we can show the rate of arrests for burglary and theft and all that stuff has gone way down.
Yeah, because typically what happens is a federal program comes and says, we want you to set this up.
Right.
And they give you X number of dollars to set it up.
Right.
Then before you can actually prove any legitimate benefit that the society or the Manchester Nash was getting, the money pulls out. So the state or local government is left holding the bag of this new federal bureaucracy that you still have no clue whether it's even a good idea.
Well, in the particular case of the drug court, there's not going to be a bureaucracy because the people that are going to be involved are already in different positions.
Right.
I mean, you get a prosecutor that'll be there. You get the different attorneys from both sides, probation person.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I know
The added person would be, like the somebody. Wow.
The coach or whatever.
Yeah.
Are they gonna? Are the coaches gonna be? Is it gonna be use the AA type model where the coaches actually be somebody who's been through it as opposed to?
We're at the very early stages of it. We haven't even made up the teams yet that are going to go get trained.
Because you get some human service person coming on and trying to tell somebody about drugs, and the human service person's been to college and they're really nice and cute and everything else. They're gonna go, yeah, all right, whatever.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think it has to be quite like that.
Yeah,
I think it's more likely that it's going to be contracted out to some to a
vendor or something.
Yeah, a vendor that's already got experience, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, I hope it works. I mean, it'd be nice to me. The way to deal with it is start focusing the importance on people staying married, and that, like you say, that image of the father with his arms around his kid. That's really the way to fix it, but obviously we got a ways to go before we ever come around to that.
We've gone a long way from those days.
It's a wicked long way. I was talking to somebody that in the 70s, they really didn't have that much even family court. In the early 70s, family court was not a big deal because there's very few. It was unnecessary there. So I don't know how many they had, but there was. I don't even think they had a family court.
Right.
They just dealt with it in the regular court system because you didn't need a separate court system just for family problems.
When did the family court start then? Was that like in the 80s?
I got no idea.
I do not know either.
Yeah, probably 80s, something like that. Because by that time, by the early 80s, the divorce rate was already at 50%.
Yeah.
And now I forget what I'm going to go out on a limb. I think 30% of something like 30% of all the court cost for judiciary is somehow centered around divorce and court and marriage and stuff like that, and broken families and kids that are the result of those families. Because Dan Itza.
Yes.
He was on Child and Family in my first couple of terms up there.
Right.
And he said over 90% of the children in the Department of Child Youth Services are from single or broken homes.
Oh, yeah, that's not so bad.
Yeah, they're not. The intact homes saved the state a boatload of money.
Sure.
But so okay, so you've been a county attorney. This is your second going to be your next 4. Hopefully, you get 2 more years.
Right. Running for 2 more years.
2 more years. And the family. The drug court. When's that supposed to start going into effect?
I guess probably be a year from now, at least.
Okay.
It's going to take a while. Like I said, they're only writing the grant now. The judges are going to write the grant. They need a team to name. The team would go out and get, on some schedule, they would go out and get trained for how they were going to do it. They'd have to come back and write protocols for the whole thing, and then get started. So.
Okay. Now is that
18 months?
Is that going to be in more than one county at once, or is it just?
No, it's county by county. So Stratford and Rockingham already have their own.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, protocols are a little different in the two because each court writes its own protocols.
Okay.
So, yeah, they have already got it. And that's why, there's some hope that it will be a good thing because those counties think it's a good program.
Right. Does it seem like it's showing any results?
They say it is.
Preliminary?
They say it is.
How long has it been?
Stratford's been years now, and I think Rockingham might only be a year or 2.
Okay. Yeah, because it's good. I know that we had a debate on the House floor. I think it was over the budget, but somebody was saying we were cutting some program. I don't recall what it was. And Ken Weiler, the chairman of the budget committee,
Right.
got up and said, like you said, yeah, it's a great program. It makes a lot of people feel good, but there is no evidence that it works because there's no a barometer of if X number of kids or people or whatever go through this program, that there is any tangible evidence that they do better than somebody you just throw in jail. And it wasn't the drug court, but it was some other court.
Yeah, it's important to have those sort of barometers or matrix or whatever you want to call
something.
them,
Metrics,
so that
yeah.
you can, because it's so hard to tell somebody no when they have what appears to be a good idea. You have to be able to quantify it, and of course for somebody to spend the money,
Yeah.
you have to be able to quantify it. So you quantify it one way or the other, and then it's a lot easier. It takes the argument out of it.
Yeah, because if you don't keep track of those numbers, then you have no clue. Because it's taxpayer money, and some people think that's an endless supply somewhere, but it really isn't.
No.
And it's like Ken Weiler said, that the evidence dictates that, programs like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous actually work better than the state program, and that's free. So I think that's one of the things we as legislators have to worry about anyway.
Right.
Is typically a program often sounds really, really cool, but it doesn't necessarily pan out to actually accomplish anything. So you can't just do that with taxpayer money without any kind of evidence.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Evidence is good.
Evidence is good. Yeah, you would know that.
Yeah.
Now somebody
He's a good attorney.
somebody brought up a point, and I don't know what you think about it, was that getting away from more, I don't know what the percentage, you probably know, what are the percentage of trials that end in a plea bargain?
You mean cases in a plea bargain?
Case, yes,
Yeah,
that's
well,
right.
it's always been said that it's 90%. I never checked our office's record on that.
All
But,
right.
it's just a generally stated thing that
Wow.
90% of cases plea.
Okay.
That's more than I would have expected.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And the point that I don't even know. If it was
And actually, probably the term is 90% of cases settle, because when I was in private practice as well, with all the injury cases or what have you,
Oh, yeah.
you would tell somebody you want this or that, and eventually you'd get to settling it.
The reason I'm bringing it up is they said that the plea bargain system has pushed us away from the traditional legal system, in that let me put it this way. I get caught with, how much is it if I get caught with a pound of pot? Is that like 5 years or something? I don't know what
It's
it is.
3.5 to 7.
3.5 to 7.
Which always makes me laugh, because there's no way
Well,
he's
no
going to
way.
get the highest one if it's the first time. But
Right. Okay, but 3.5 to 7.
He's ambitious.
I'm ambitious.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, if I get caught with it, and I'm looking at 3.5 years to 7, even though it might not even be mine, I don't know. I pick up some kid hitchhiking, and he puts it under the seat. The cops pull me
Yeah.
over, and he takes off at the hills. It's in my car.
right.
Okay. It actually happened. When I was a teenager, right?
That actually happened. I was going to say that
not
never
quite.
happened.
No, not quite that bad. But it was. This is too funny. We're driving along. I used to get in a little bit of trouble, and I'm driving along, and we had picked up this kid earlier who was above age. I think he was 19 or something, and the drinking age was 18. And so we're driving along, and we pulled over because somebody had to relieve themselves. And so the state police see my car pulled over. They turn around, coming back. We're standing out there, They get us all out, and then they see the case of beer. And they said, "Is that yours?" "Nope." "Whose is it?" "Well, the kid that actually owns it just took off in the woods as soon as he saw you." "All right, really? You really think we're going to buy that?" And it was really true.
Yeah.
Okay, I can say that, I'll still, but what is it, 30 years after the fact, whatever the hell it is. But it was just funny because the cops obviously didn't believe a word I was saying.
Yeah.
Because it was just ridiculous, but it was actually the fact that the kid took off into the woods as soon as he saw the cops. But anyway, are we doing a disservice when we plea bargain so frequently, in that somebody like me, if I get caught with a pound of pot and I'm looking at 3.5 years or 3 years in jail, and I can plead bargain down to, I don't know, suspended sentence, whatever the hell they call it nowadays, in that I'm going to plead guilty to something I didn't do, because the probability that I'll end up in jail for 3 years is so profound that I'm willing to admit something that I really never did to begin with.
Well, I mean, there's all those factors. People are weighing all those things. What's the chance of me getting convicted? So I would imagine that people get if they're accused for something they didn't do, that they really dig in their heels and insist that they didn't.
And then they can lose
defense.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, how do you prove something? Well,
yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's just.
I mean, the fact is, the person would be in possession of if it's in his car.
Right.
So it wouldn't be that hard to. It would be proved, I guess.
It would be
so
proved.
You're saying, well, but I guess what you really want is to change the law.
No,
so throw it back on you.
No, I don't want to change the law.
I mean, if that's not possession, then you should say that you
I'm
could
just
rewrite
saying,
the law to say that's not possession, because if there's somebody else if you could write the statute that says, just because it's in your car doesn't make it possession. But at this point, that's the way it works. If it's in your car, you've got possession.
Even if it's not knowingly possessing, is there a difference?
I'm not. You're getting too far into the statutes for me to memorize all that stuff.
Okay.
The book's this big. Just the criminal code's that big.
Yeah.
But anyway, in
Jeez,
terms of
time
plea
goes
bargains, I mean, plea bargains, they do happen a lot. I mean, the best prosecutors, they can look at a case and see, which ones should plea out, which ones need to go to trial, which ones will probably need to go to trial, because where the person is. People tend to go to trial when they've sort of had, desperate to not go to prison. So,
Right.
So they're trying to see if they can be acquitted, and I let my prosecutors, do the best they can. I get great prosecutors, and that's how they handle all the cases that we have.
All right, we actually have a caller.
Oh, we get a caller.
Yes. Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's on the line? Hello?
They're probably calling to correct me from something I said.
Hello there.
Hi, I was wondering, I missed the first few minutes of the show, and I was wondering if you could identify who your guest is and what office he's running for.
Attorney Dennis Hogan. He's running to get reelected as Hillsborough County Attorney.
Thanks for asking. I appreciate that.
Oh, he's gone.
Yeah, if I was actually a good show host, I'd repeat that about 100 times during the show. But I just
sometimes they have it under my. I should have brought a sign so it would be under.
Oh, there you go, like a "Hello, my name is"
Hello,
kind
my
of
name
thing.
is Dennis Hogan.
around your neck like a big plaque.
But I know this station sometimes has it.
I've been
at this set before, and they were able to put it under me, so it was appearing every time I appeared. It said Dennis Hogan, Hillsborough County Attorney. But thank you for asking.
The logo takes up most of the screen.
I'm Dennis Hogan, the Hillsborough County Attorney.
Before we run out of time, the other one I wanted to ask about was this year. We've been pushing. We got through legislation on jury nullification.
Right. We just got one of our cases had that as a jury instruction already, because it's coming.
In Hillsborough, or is that the one that...
No, in Hillsborough South. It was yesterday. That was not on any news. You're making news right here on your station.
Wow.
Because
really?
Nobody covered it as news. But yes, it was given as an instruction in a habitual offender case.
Right.
And, of course, that made me laugh, because I don't think any jury is going to nullify the habitual offender law.
Right.
But they got to do it anyway, and there was a conviction on that case.
Okay, so they ignored the they didn't apply.
I mean, the jury could nullify if they didn't think the law was just or
Correct,
something. I mean, what jury is going to say that the habitual offender law isn't just. I mean, these
Right.
jurors have to go out on the road.
Right.
Right.
There's quite a lot of support for the law of the drinking and driving laws.
Right. No,
Yeah.
no. But it's good. To me, it's really good. Like the case that was in, I forget what
You're making.
Keene.
I don't think so, because that would have been Cheshire. I think it was more like Stratford. I'm pretty.
Yeah,
or,
where the guy,
or
basically
up
the
in
guy.
Laconia,
Yeah,
maybe.
something, whatever. The guy was a long-haired Rastafarian dude that
Right.
is about 180 years
Yeah, man.
old. Yeah, man, been smoking 20 bones a day. But he was actually growing pot for himself, and he wasn't selling it on the street. He wasn't selling it to kids, and so the jury nullified, said that it really is not appropriate to apply that law in this particular case because he wasn't really.
He's not a dangerous criminal. It has to be
No,
locked
he's-
up.
Well,
Yeah.
it's still it's still it comes under the statute as manufacturing.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
I mean, I think the legislature, if they want that not to be legal, if they want that to be legal, they should make an exception for growing.
I agree.
Yeah, well, I still love the jury nullification. I really think that the juries are smart enough to make that final decision. You know what I mean? That they're capable of looking at a given situation where maybe the law really shouldn't be applied in this case. Where you as a prosecutor still have to look at the letter of the law, still prosecute,
Right.
because that's what you're getting paid to do.
Right.
The defense attorney still has to defend, but I'm sure there's cases that will come to light where the law really shouldn't have been applied.
All I can say is it's going to be interesting to see how it works out.
It's going to be very interesting.
Yes.
I'm not sure I want my job any more interesting, but it's going to be interesting to see how it works out.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time.
Oh, wow.
Dennis, thank you very
I
much.
appreciate you having me
Good
on.
luck
I
in
appreciate your the gentleman who called and asked who I am. I'm Dennis
Yes.
Hogan. I'm the Hillsborough County Attorney. I'm running for re-election. I'm doing a great job, and I'd appreciate your support in November 6th. Thank you.
And that was Eric who called. Thanks for calling, Eric.
Thank
I
you, Eric.
recognize his voice. He didn't identify
Matt.
himself, but
Have yourself a nice week.
thank you. I thought you were
You're
going to say
up.
have yourself a merry little Christmas.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Couple weeks. I'll wait a couple weeks.
All right, good.
Thank you very much, folks. We'll see you
Thanks,
next.
everybody.
Oh, who do I got next week?
I don't
Gail, the lady running for Senate in this district. Not Gail.
Kelly is one of
No,
them.
not Kelly.
Barry?
Gail Berry.
The
Gail
Republican?
Yes.
There you go.
Is that it?
I don't know. Is
Yeah,
that
Barry.
it?
Is that correct?
We think it's
Okay.
Gail Berry. We'll let you know next week.
Yeah, we'll let you know
We'll,
next
we'll,
week.
we'll ask her when she's here.
Yeah.
who she is.
Yeah. And then somebody will call and say, "Who is that?"
Yeah.
Hey, have a good weekend.
everybody.
Week.